The Spanish poet Antonio Machado, who lived from 1875 to 1939, wrote this in his collection, Proverbs and Songs. This is number 39. Walker, your footsteps are the road, and nothing more. Walker, there is no road. The road is made by walking. Walking, you make the road. And turning to look behind, you see a path you never again will step upon. Walker, there is no road, only foam trails on the sea. I'll read it again. Stand in this, we are the walker. It's referring to us as walker. Walker, your footsteps are the road and nothing more. Walker, there is no road. The road is made by walking. Walking, you make the road. And turning to look behind, you see the path you never again will step upon. Walker, there is no road, only foam trails on the sea. You all know that I am doing some graduate work for my doctorate, and part of that means reading, and part of that means reading church administration books, and part of that means reading them from a very Christian perspective. I'm doing a lot of translation in my mind and quieting my internal editor and saying, well, what do you mean by that? Well, that can't possibly be right. And trying to figure out what does it mean for me. And I'm reading a book, listening to it on audiobook, actually. It's a great use of time, called Canoeing in the Mountains by Todd Bolsinger. I gave that little preface because I'm not recommending that you go out and read this book. There's some good parts of it, but unless you really want to know about church administration at the end of Christendom, you probably might not be your thing. I don't know, Carolyn, you might like it. Yeah. Well, the title itself is interesting, Canoeing in the Mountains, because the metaphor that he uses is the story of Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark, yes, a fascinating story, right? Of these explorers and their band of explorers with them who were called the Corps of Discovery, Corps, C-O-R-P-S, the Corps of Discovery. And they are tasked by Thomas Jefferson with following the Missouri River as far as they possibly can. At the time, people thought it went forever. It was endless, the Missouri River. And finding the Northwest Passage that everyone believed at the time, including the French explorers and the Spanish explorers and the British explorers, everyone believed that there was a waterway that would connect the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico, right? The Missouri goes down to the Gulf of Mexico. And this was, whoever owned that water route, it would be like owning the internet today. It was, you would be assured of, from a capitalist perspective, owning the world, right? So they trek, they go up the mountains and up the mountains and up the mountains, and they get to what's called the Lemhi Pass, which is now what we know as Idaho. And they reach the headwaters of the Missouri River. And this is, they've reached the fountain. And they expect, we know this from their journals, Meriwether Lewis's, yes, William Clark, his journals, that he really expected that what lays in the west of the country was like what they knew from the east of the country. That they would get up to the top, they'd been slogging up, canoeing uphill for a long ways, and they would get there, and then they would coast down. By the time they got to the peak, which is the Continental Divide, they would just coast right down. It could not have been more wrong. What they saw up there was the Rocky Mountains laid out for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, ragged peaks as far as they could see. It didn't look anything like the Appalachian Mountains. Nice, covered with trees. And everything they thought they knew was wrong. Everything they thought they knew was wrong. So they continued to explore and they did what they did. The point of the book is everything that is in front of us is completely unlike everything that lay. This moment that we are in right here on May 7th of 2023, facing an unknown future in our country, on our planet, as the proliferation of mass shootings everywhere and climate disaster and pandemic, certainly not the only one we're ever going to see in the rest of our lifetimes. Here we gather safe and warm on this day, but the future that lies in front of us doesn't look anything like this. I don't know who the youngest person in the room is or who the oldest is. Gail, are you picking the young? Okay, good. Certainly at heart. Yeah. I'm 60. And the way that the world changed from 1900 to 1962 was a pretty rapid change. I was born right around at the end of the Cold War, beginning of the space exploration. Some of you are older and some of you are younger than me. Think of the rapid change from 1960 to now. As much change as in perhaps centuries before. Up until the middle of the last decade, we could say that change happened with relative stability and gradually over time. But that's not true anymore. Change happens enormously quickly. The rise of the information age and the rise of technology makes the way we communicate completely different than we did before. And what we know about our world is so different, and the things that we know we have to deal with. So I talked when we were early in the pandemic about the acronym VUCA. We are in a VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. What lay behind us did not adequately prepare us, we think, for what lies. I think we have a benefit as Unitarian Universalists, as people in this progressive congregation, that we are not weighed down and tied to traditions that don't serve us anymore. Many of us left those denominations that did not serve us anymore, where we either couldn't agree with the theology or the ecclesiology, the way church did its work, only men in the pulpit and never women in the pulpit, or a punishing way to think about human sexuality. We left many of those, and we are not bringing forward with us a lot of that baggage. But here we are, we faithful remnant, sitting in rows, looking forward while somebody delivers a message. We stand up and we sing a song, we sit down. We don't kneel. You're welcome. But we stride this borderland. We hold this borderland between an old kind of way of doing church, a religiosity, and the secular world. our message is mostly secular, but we gather because we can do some things together. And we believe that gathering together to speak a progressive word, to be able to say freely in this space, the proliferation of guns is bad, and trans kids deserve love and belonging and welcome, and they're perfect just as they are, and abortion is healthcare. And what else do we want to say? That democracy is the cornerstone of our ability to be together, and the separation of church and state is primary, is the way to answer Christian nationalism. What else could we say that's a dangerous idea? Climate change. Climate change is real, right? Climate change is real. That the way that we imagine the criminal legal system is damaging to the people who are in charge of that system and to the people that they are meant to protect. That there are all these things we can say. I think that it makes sense to come together as progressive people to say them when you can't say them outside. That's the use to me, one of the uses to me of congregation. And the other is to hold each other's stories. Is to hold each other's stories of joy and sorrow, to know when people are ill and reach out and care for them, know when people can't be with us anymore and reach out to them and see how they're doing. To have an idea of, could we do something different? Could we do something radically different? Let's make up something as a way to be together and go forward with that, not because you can't do it alone. I'm looking at you, Gail, because of the Main Street Voices idea. Because we can imagine and walk together on a road, because we can create ideas and walk together to make that road so that folks can come with us, can see the path, and come along with us. Somebody may want to be out in the front, cutting the brush. It's a big job. Keith, I'm looking at you. You might be the one out there cutting the brush. Because it will take all of our creativity to make this road. There's a writer named Catherine Hathaway, and she was born in 1890 to an affluent Massachusetts family, and she had spinal tuberculosis as a child. No, you could get tuberculosis in the spine, but that was her diagnosis, and it was devastating to her and to her family. And they had the means at the time to give her the support and the care that she needed, but she eventually became her spine hunched over, and she became physically diminished, but her mind was very good. And she wrote this. I just love this quote. I invented this rule for myself to be applied to every decision I might have to make in the future. I would sort out all of the arguments and see which belong to fear and which to creativeness. All other things being equal, I would make the decision which had the larger number of creative reasons on its side. I would sort out all the arguments, see which belong to fear and which to creativeness. All other things being equal, I would make the decision that had the larger number of creative reasons on its side. I think it must be a rule, something like this, that makes jonquils and crocuses come pushing through the mud. A jonquil or a crocus bulb were fearful of what lay on the outside of the mud. Perhaps they wouldn't go. Boy, I love that. We each have choices. And as a congregation, at points in our life as a congregation, this healthy, good congregation now, we'll have choices to make, and which will be made out of fear and which will be made out of creativity. I think what we do here, we learn lessons for our corporate body, our life together, and also for our own life. The more I practice creativity and not lean into fear, the more I can be creative as I come into our decisions that we make together. And I find that's really true of this congregation. I find that we don't make decisions out of fear, but out of creativity. And I've referenced before the Main Street Voices burgeoning new program that we're putting together. We don't know. We don't know what it will all look like, but there's energy there and opportunities for creativity and bringing more people into the way we create meaning together. Just one other piece I'll say, and then I'll open it up for a little bit of conversation. I am also, as you know, as a part of this doctoral work, I am involved with what's called the Jewish Studio Project. It is a way of encountering text and art making as a spiritual practice. I'm the only non-Jew in the group, and I'm learning a great deal. And as I bring my humanist mind into the conversation, I'm learning so much from my folks in the cohort about how to encounter wisdom stories. So in our song this morning, Born of the One Light, Eden saw play. We were in the Garden of Eden. There are two lines in the early, at the very beginning of the creation story. And by the way, it's a creation story. Every culture has a creation story. And so this is one. And if I think of it as a wisdom story and not as a newspaper report or a science report, then I can move past my, don't talk to me about the Bible. You know, I can move past that and say what wisdom is there. So many of you know these words. In the beginning was void and chaos. The beginning was void and chaos. And God created. The message that we learn from this is that creativity comes out of chaos. Creativity comes out of, we don't know what, it's chaos. Marissa, I heard you say this, somebody say that you're doing a couple of shows with Festival Theater this summer. And the beginning of a show can be chaos, right? It can just be chaos. The tech night can be chaos. Creativity comes out of chaos. We needn't have the perfect clear space. We needn't have no distractions for creativity to be our birthright. Here's where that comes from. God, the force, the life force in that creation story, creates humans in their own image. By the way, I think God is the perfect example for they, them pronouns. And I'm just saying, if you want to practice they, them pronouns, apply it to the whole. God creates humans in their own image, which means as a birthright, we are created. If you extrapolate that, if you need it to be based in science, that's cool. We are evolved from what lay before to be forward facing. We are evolving. It is our birthright to be created and evolve into a new way. So these are the things that are comforting me when I find myself troubled in the midst by all that is wrong. These are the things that comfort me in the night when I find myself troubled by all that is wrong in the world. That I do not have to do it alone. I don't have to figure it out alone, and I better not try. We are stronger as we make meaning in community because my creativity needs your creativity. As you think of something I could not have before. That even though what lies before us is nothing like what lies behind us, we are adaptable. We, as they say in Moneyball, the movie Moneyball, it's adapt or die. We are adaptable. That the more energy we give to creativity and not fear, the more we can believe. And I hope you'll come with me as we go forward.